Today on Inside Comics, Marvel Stan Lee, movie Scream Queen Brinke Stevens, and Jim Carrey is the Mask.
I'm Nikki.
And I'm Tony. Today on Inside Comics, movie Scream Queen Brinke Stevens, Jim Carrey is the Mask, and Marvel's Stan Lee.
But first, let's talk about censorship in comics.
Censorship in the comics industry has been a problem since the earliest comics. In the late 40s and early 50s, comic books sold in the millions to a diverse audience. But in 1954, in response to Senate hearings in Congress, the Comics Authority Code was formed.
I believe from my research that prior to 1954, when the Comics Code Authority was established, there was a diverse readership. We're coming back to that now.
Back in the 1950s, when everybody was scared of censorship, the comics declared themselves just for kids. Even though, where you see the World War II footage of the soldiers, reading comics all the time, and even though there was a much broader audience, comics shut themselves down from any adult market.
Publishers were forced to adhere to the code. Despite vocal opposition from Mad publisher William Gaines, the code was instigated, driving many publishers out of business. By the 70s, the comic book industry was nearly dead, but was saved by the direct sales market. With the direct sales market, publishers could sell to retailers on a non-returnable basis and get their work uncensored to comics fans.
We still have something called the direct sales market, where if I print and sell a book to a retailer, it is non-returnable. The whole system depends upon all sides of the marketplace being straight with each other. I'm going to publish what I promised, and hopefully they're only going to order what they're able to sell. As long as that marketplace exists in some form, unlike books, unlike records, unlike movies, individual creators will be able to present their own vision to an ever-growing audience. I think that's a very important thing in American culture right now, as we see more and more and more major corporations controlling communication networks.
But despite this freedom, the specter of censorship continues to haunt creators.
All we probably ever had with Swamp Thing in terms of censorship was in the very first issue, the origin story, where the Comics Code didn't like the idea he was enveloped in flame as he ran to the lake and fell into the water. So we kept the exact same artwork, changed the word flame to fumes, and the Comics Code went, that's fine, and went happily along.
On the Punisher, we can't show exit wounds. They started recoloring our exit wounds yellow, which I'm like, one bodily fluid is preferable to another.
In my first one, I did a little bondage scene, and, well, my characters were enjoying themselves, but they weren't smiling, so they had to paint little smiles on it because our distributor wouldn't distribute it if everyone wasn't happy about being spanked and tied up.
Censorship in comics is something that I'm real sensitive about myself. I censor myself very, very heavily. When I first thought of this story, I thought as a reader we would just be with these girls everywhere. If they go to the bathroom, we go with them. When I ended up actually doing the story, I decided not to. I wanted the story to be more accessible. It still ended, the miniseries ended up as a mature readers only, and I feel like it hurt my sales.
It's just one of those things about free expression that creative people are naturally going to gravitate to the thing that they're not allowed to do. So, while all other media are being laundered of any meaning, content, or interest for the average creative person, comic books are getting to be one of the few places that you can just sit down and put down on paper what you want to say.
Currently, there is a landmark censorship case in the Florida courts.
Michael C. Diana, who got sentenced for publishing, distributing, and creating obscene materials in Florida, and was sentenced to 3 years parole. He's not allowed. Have you guys heard about this?
We'll tell you more about this controversial Michael C. Diana case and what the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund is doing to fight it later in the show.
Looking at comics this week, I want to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine comic book from Malibu. This is a great comic, adaptation of the TV series. More adventures with the characters going to different planets. If you're a fan of Security Chief Odo, the shape changer, and you're tired of seeing him appear on the show and never use his power, check out the comic book because he uses it every single issue.
I am not a fan of the DS9 comic book nor the television show. It just doesn't do anything for me. But on the other hand, Scud, the Disposable Assassin, there is a good comic book for you. It is the story of a disposable assassin who you can get out of a vending machine, much like a can of soda. Now, supposedly, once he takes out who he was hired to kill, he's supposed to self-destruct. But not Scud, because he becomes self-aware. And so in order to keep himself alive, he kills, for money, of course, so that he can keep his opponents on life support. This is the greatest comic of all time.
I really enjoyed Scud, too. The guys who created Scud come from a completely different background, not a comic book background, more comedy, more animation, and the book's just great. You should check it out from Fireman Press.
Here's a comment from Scud creator Rob Schraub.
Now, issue number 3, which is coming out in August, at the end of issue number 2, he gets shot through the hand, where we find out in issue number 1, that's where he gets inputted in with his contempt level, how he feels about each individual target. If you program him at 10, he'll really, really hate the target. If you program him with at level 1, he'll very systematically take out the character. He gets shot through the panel, and he basically shoots up to level 15 and goes insane. And it's a real insane issue where he just totally tears everything up. Very, very nuts.
Cosmic Comics on the White Horse Pike in Berlin, New Jersey, just off Route 30, midway between Atlantic City and Philadelphia. Golden Age, Silver Age, and Modern Age comics. T-shirts, trading cards, magic cards, and sports cards. Cosmic Comics also has mail service. Comics delivered right to your home. For more information, call 609-768-7117. That's 609-768-7117. Cosmic Comics. For collectibles, if you want it, we'll find it.
The Creators Coalition is an arts, culture, and educational nonprofit organization fostering support for creators everywhere. Comic book artists, writers, inkers, letterers, colorists, as well as sculptors, photographers, graphic designers, computer graphic designers, computer colorists, and any print or creative medium, battling illiteracy wherever it's found and helping to bring the joy of reading comics to young readers. To donate, send your tax-deductible donation to the Creators Coalition, 64 Captain Shanky Drive, Garnerville, New York, 10923, or call for more information.
Welcome back to Inside Comics.
Inside Comics took its cameras down to Fat Jack's in Philadelphia to interview movie scream queen Brink Stevens, who has her own comic book from Chaos Comics called Brink of Eternity.
I love comic books. I've read them ever since I was a kid. I collected Inferior 5 and Metal Men. I wish I knew what happened to them. My mom threw them all out one day when she was cleaning house. And then I got into Vampirella, the original one, way back when in the 70s. And now I'm reading Vampirella and a lot of the female comics, mostly to get ideas.
Like many actresses, Brink got her start in movies as a Hollywood extra.
I was trying to find a science job in Los Angeles, And one day I walked by a room that had an open door, and there were movie posters on the wall. So I kind of like looking in, and the guy says, come here, come here. And he ended up putting me in a movie the next day. It was a casting office. And I liked it, so ever since then I've been doing films. That movie was called All the Marbles with Peter Falk. I was an extra in it, you know, $35 a day and lunch. But that was where I got bitten by the acting bug.
But Brink is best known by her fans for her appearances in a host of horror movies.
The first movie I got after that, where I had a big speaking part, was Roger Corman's Slumber Party Massacre, where I'm victim number 2 out of about 17. I get killed in the locker room by this crazy driller killer. And it was fun. It was the first time I'd ever screamed and then died horribly on film. And we went out in the parking lot, and I screamed over and over for about 45 minutes until the sound man got the perfect scream on tape, because it has to tell the story of my death. You don't really see the blood and gore, but the scream describes it all. So I'm amazed nobody called the police. I certainly would have. But it just started me as a scream queen. I've probably been killed more times than any other actress in films. I've had my throat slit with a razor blade. I've been pulled apart by demons. Shot in the back with guns, shot with arrows, you name it. A hand grenade in my mouth. That was my favorite one.
Now Brink stars in her own comic called Brink of Eternity. Co-created by Chaos Comics' Brian Pulido, Brink must save the Earth using her powers.
My powers in the comic book come from another dimension. It's an eternity power. And in the next miniseries, you'll find out a lot more about where it comes from. It's actually a creature that lives inside of us. It's kind of a bioorganic thing that we take inside our bodies, and it makes us stronger. I co-created the first story with Brian Pulido. It began by my giving him 2 pages of plot, and this is what I wanted. And then Brian Pulido did the actual writing. As you know, he does Evil Ernie and Lady Death. But in the next one, I have my own concept about what I want to do. First of all, we're coming out with a 3-part miniseries called Brink of Destruction. It'll be out in the spring, and Boris Vallejo is doing my first cover. I shot with him in Pennsylvania 2 days ago, and Julie Bell is doing the second cover. So hopefully after that we'll do another Brink of Insanity or Brink of something, you know, and we'll keep going.
Besides comic book sequels, Brink continues to work on sequels to her films.
I had done a movie called Haunting Fear that turned out to be incredibly popular when it came out on Laserdisc. An unheard of thing happened. It sold out within a week and a half, and they had to go back and do a second printing. So everybody has wanted a sequel to this movie. And they're saying, well, we took it to 5 different writers, and nobody could come up with the right idea. Because the premise is based on Edgar Allan Poe, The Premature Burial. I have to be buried alive. So how do you make that happen twice in one woman's lifetime? So nobody could come up with a viable plot how I could get buried alive a second time and go insane and kill everybody. But I came up with an idea. So I'm working on that right now, and hopefully sometime early in '95 we'll be shooting Haunting Fear 2, Dead and Buried. I love being a superhero, I have to tell you. It's so wonderful to have my own comic book. I get to run around in costume and make a lot of little boys very happy.
Taking a look at today's super movie. A super movie is a movie about superheroes or heroic exploits. Today's super movie is The Mask. Based after the Dark Horse comic book, The Mask is about a boring bank teller named Stanley Ipkiss who finds a magical mask that turns him into a party animal.
Spoken! It's like it brings your innermost desires to life. You become some sort of a love-crazy wild man. I want him here tomorrow, alive. Now you have to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Do you? Thanks.
The Mask movie, after 5 years, is finally out and successful. We feel very much a part of that whole process. And as a result of our Largo relationship with Larry Gordon, this September we'll see the release of Time Cop, which was an original idea.
I enjoyed The Mask. I thought it was okay. I thought they gave away most of the surprises in the trailer. Most of the special effects are in there. They even show the part where the dog puts on the mask. But the movie's okay. It's a lot of fun. Jim Carrey's usually funny, and it's worth going to see. Let's rate The Mask on a Mighty Meter. I'm going to give The Mask a 3.5.
Hi, this is Marv Wolfman. Inside Comics will be right back.
Fight censorship. Support the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. The Defense Fund is a non-profit organization supporting the rights of comic book artists, writers, and creators. In its 6 years of existence, the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund has spent over $100,000 protecting cartoonists' freedom of speech. Show your support. Send your tax-deductible donations to the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, P.O. Box 693, Northampton, Massachusetts, 01061, and help keep freedom of speech free.
Cosmic Comics. For collectibles, if you want it, we'll find it.
These days, censorship in comic books seems to be everywhere.
I did work for Details magazine, and the issue that I had a comic strip that involved sort of sexual matters didn't get distribution in Canada or in the South.
With Canadian customs, I can't send anything across the border with Boneyard Press on it at all.
Most of the Eros titles were published, they were printed in Mexico because we couldn't find an American printer or a Canadian printer at various times.
In the Canada and censorship, we just got some write-ups in New York Times, New York Post, all the New York, in fact, USA Today, I think, did a spot on this. And what it's about is Canada doesn't have a constitution, and because of that, it doesn't have any freedom of speech. So they're the Maple Leaf Thought Police.
But a landmark case in the Florida courts may have a far-reaching effect on the comics industry. On March 27th, artist Michael C. Diana was convicted of selling what the court ruled obscene material through the mail.
Young guy, 21, 20, Xeroxes up 300 copies of his zine, Boiled Angel. He distributes it through the mail, virtually every copy outside of Florida. One copy happens to be stumbled upon by police authorities while investigating a serial murder case. They pass that along to the local sheriff's office, who, over a 2-year period, somebody in there, for unclear reasons, corresponded with Mike and pretended he was a zine fan and ordered a couple of copies of the next few issues. And then, sort of rather suddenly, they decided, oh, wait, this is obscene.
They took him to court, and he lost. He lost. He's 3 years parole. He has to undergo psychotherapy. He has to be gainfully employed. He's got to pay, I think it's like $3,000. I'm not quite sure, maybe a little bit more than that. He's not allowed to draw. He's not allowed any contact with anybody under the age of 21. Pretty stiff, huh? You thought you're living in America.
For the most part, I think what you do in the privacy of your own home is your concern and yours alone. I think it's the biggest bogus thing in the world. They come spot checking him whether to see what he's drawing or not. As an artist, that's an expression of freedom of speech.
I think that we all, we have the ability to draw anything we want, but maybe we don't have the right to draw everything we want. We all have the ability to dismember a baby, but we don't have the right to do it.
It's ridiculous. Like I said, I'm not really political or anything, but I'm an artist, and it seems like those guys down in Florida are really nosy, Poor Pee-wee and poor him, Dang, and it's so boring in Florida. You think they'd be happy to have a little something going on there.
We're on the air in Florida, so we'll cut that.
Oh, cut that.
Fortunately, the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund came to Michael's aid. Since its inception, the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund has fought for creators' freedom of speech.
Usually you scratch the surface in any of these cases, and you usually find an opportunistic district attorney or some hysteric of some sort. The way the industry has responded is by forming the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. I'm a member of the board of directors, and we're there to help the retailers out against these awful charges, because fighting for the First Amendment is part of our duty as citizens, along with being artists.
Right now we have cases in Florida, Georgia, California, 2 cases in California. Most of them have to do with distributing offensive material, and one of them has to do with the state of California suing one of our artists for not recognizing comic book art as a legitimate art form and wanting to tax it as a commercial art.
But without something like the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, I think a lot of those cases, a lot of those defendants would get railroaded, and bad precedents would be set. I think that's on a case-by-case basis. It's a good thing that we have the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund because those tend to be brush fire issues. I know there's a great paranoia in the comic book field, or a lot of elements of it, that we're going to have some enormous crackdown as we had in the mid-1950s. But in the 1990s, if it doesn't work on television, then it doesn't have the legs for scandal.
For more information on Michael C. Diana, Boiled Angel, or any of his other comics, contact Michael Hunt Comics at P.O. Box 226, Bensonville, Illinois 60106, or call 708-794-2723.
Today's lucky letter is from Pete Beiser in Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania, who writes, Dear Insight Comics, what can you tell me about the upcoming Star Trek Next Generation movie? Well, I can tell you that the movie is called Star Trek Generations. It's definitely going to be out '94, and a pirate script that has been going around has this movie showing the ultimate destruction of Enterprise D and the death of Captain Kirk in Jean-Luc Picard's arms. Pretty interesting. What does Pete win for writing this?
We're going to send Pete a Time Cop promotional package, and it contains all sorts of neat stuff. If you would like to win all sorts of neat stuff, send your letter to Inside Comics, P.O. Box 10035, Philadelphia, PA 19108. Please include your name, age, a question, and the type of stuff you want to win.
Time Cop opens nationwide on Friday, September 16th. For your chance to win a Time Cop promotional package, write to Inside Comics and Time Cop, P.O. Box 10035, Philadelphia, PA 19108.
It's sponsored by Inside Comics and Universal Pictures. Time Cop. Turn back the clock and your history.
Today on Celebrity Corner, Nikki talks to Marvel legend Stan Lee.
How active are you today with Marvel Comics?
Well, I'm not involved in the day-to-day operation, but I try to keep my hand in as much as possible. I follow what they're doing. I love what they're doing, and it's great to be here and be a part of it for at least a little while.
Tell me about the old days at Marvel. It always sounds like you guys had so much fun with this.
The old days at Marvel were great. We had this little bullpen. It wasn't very big. I knew everybody personally. We were all close friends. And it wasn't like working. It was just like playing with all your friends. It was wonderful. It's still great, but it's a bigger business now.
Any words about the King, Jack Kirby?
Oh, he was the greatest, and, you know, I don't know what to say. It's a terrible, terrible loss. But his work will be remembered, he'll be remembered, respected, and honored.
Can you give us any inside scoops on the Marvel Power Hour coming out this fall?
Well, he can. Well, actually, it's the Marvel Action Hour, I think. And it consists of a half hour of the Fantastic Four, a half hour of Iron Man, and guess who's going to be the host who'll do a live intro to each show? I know it's a hard thing to guess. There you are. Right. But I'm going to be doing it, and it's very exciting, and I can't wait to get started.
Is it true that you're still working on the Spider-Man newspaper strip?
Yes, I write that. I've been writing that since 1977, and I've got to do that 7 days a week, and it's like having the sword of Damocles hanging over your head every day. Write the Spider-Man strip. But it's good. It's in over 500 newspapers. It seems to be the best-selling and most popular of all the story strips, so we're very proud of it. Well, the one that we have now, if I can remember it, Spider-Man decides that he wants to... When I say now, I'm writing it now. It won't come out for another few weeks. He wants to find a way to make money with his superpower, and he can't think of a way to do it without hurting people. Like if he plays football, he might kill the person he bumps into and so forth. Finally, he gets an idea, but before we tell the readers what the idea is, we're making a contest out of it, and we're going to ask all the readers to write in and tell us what they think he should do in order to make money with his power.
That's it for Inside Comics this week. Tune in next week. We're going to review the movie The Shadow.
And we're going to be talking to All My Children's Walt Willey. He has his own comic book, don't you know? Tell your wives, your sisters, your girlfriends. Be here next week.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Don't you know?
Don't you know?
What are you, English now?
Don't you know?
You the English flower girl with the hat?